From the Subaru of Gwinnett Studio, welcome to Celebrating Powerhouse Women. Celebrating Powerhouse Women is proudly presented by CAB Incorporated and Capital City Home Loans.
And hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another inspiring episode of Celebrating Powerhouse Women here on Business RadioX. I am your host, Amanda Pierce, and this is the series that salutes and recognizes women leaders making an impact in our community. Today is my pleasure to introduce our guest, and you guys might know her throughout the community, Tracie Cason, who serves as the Superior Court Judge here in Gwinnett County, presiding over Division 2. Welcome, Your Honor.
Thank you so much for having me, Amanda.
You're welcome. And for men and women, it's both Your Honor, right? There's
correct.
No, okay.
Yeah.
So there's no difference in the gender.
There's not.
Well, while I want to pay homage to Tracie's role within the community as the Superior Court Judge, she has given me permission to call her Tracie throughout the remainder of the show.
Of course.
So Tracie handles felony and criminal cases, domestic and family law cases, and civil disputes. She has been for 3 years the judge here in Gwinnett, and also previous to that, she was a prosecutor for 18 years. So Tracie and I know each other through being active in the community of Gwinnett, and actually we enjoyed a very special gala last year together where we got to boogie on the dance floor.
That's right. The Home of Hope.
Home of Hope.
Yes.
Maureen, help me with the last name because I slaughtered Cornoa. She is also a powerhouse lady.
She is, and she's actually my campaign chairperson.
Very nice.
Yes.
That's why it's such a powerful campaign.
Indeed.
And I will say that she throws a dang good party, too.
She really does.
And we raised a lot of money that night.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll kind of circle back around into all the arms of community participation that you're in. But let's kind of start from the beginning. You and I were sharing before the show some commonalities that we have as far as our fur babies and enthusiasms. But for the listeners who don't know Tracie, let's kind of rewind back to where it all began.
Okay.
And I'll let you decide at what year mark that is. But I'm thinking maybe around 12.
That's right. That's right. So,
all right.
I grew up in Dublin, Georgia, which is where my dad's family grew up. His family was from Lawrence County. And so I grew up in Dublin. And when I was in elementary school, we had a mock trial. And I fell in love with the law back then. And even though I was only a witness in that first mock trial, I was bitten. And some reason I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor. I loved that part of it. I loved the idea of protecting people. And so with a brief little thing of maybe I might want to be a math teacher a few years later, I always stuck with wanting to be a lawyer. In fact, I think one of my friends wrote in our senior yearbook that I was the only person that she knew that was, knew what they wanted to do. And I am very fortunate, I think, that I am one of those rare people that I've always known what I wanted to do. I'm doing it, and I love it. I just love it.
You're leading a purpose-driven life.
Absolutely.
Do you remember that book?
I do remember that book, yes.
It's funny you said that about mock trials because I have not even thought back that far in high school, and that just totally brought back to life all of like the debate, the mock trials, and etc.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing that at that time you kind of got the bite, as you said, the spirit. So from there, kind of how did you navigate and pursue that passion and help manifest it into the career that you are in today?
So I was, very fortunate to be raised in a family that it wasn't if you were going to college, it was where you were going to college. And honestly, that where wasn't even that much of a choice either, because my dad was a dog, and I had uncles that were dogs, and I had cousins that were dogs, and my sister. And of course, for those of you that maybe don't know, that's the University of Georgia, which is DAWGS. And, dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I just always knew that's where I was going to go to school. And when I went there, I got involved in Phi Kappa Literary Society, got involved in student organizations there, majored in criminal justice. And I was like, whew, I better be a lawyer because it's either a lawyer or a cop with this major. And I loved the idea of law enforcement. I did not like the idea of running toward gunfires, like Rick and I were just talking about earlier. I'm a little bit of a scaredy cat, and so I'm like, well, I'll just take care of it, after law enforcement has done their job.
Still having a very large impact.
Right.
And that's very interesting. I never thought running toward gunfire. Well, again, for those of you listening who might not be local, Tracie mentioned that she graduated from the University of Georgia Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
And also she went to Baylor University School of Law. And she lives very near Athens, where her and her husband enjoy spending many a Saturdays during the fall.
Exactly.
Kind of going back to that purpose-driven life, at such a young age, what things or what markers did you put into place in order to achieve the goal that you knew you wanted to reach at that time?
So I had a timeline of you go to college, you go to law school, and then you go to work as a lawyer. It got interrupted a little bit. I went to college, finished in 3 years, and everybody's like, "Why'd you finish UGA in 3 years? Why didn't you do another football season?" I'm like, "Well, I had season tickets. I didn't need to go to school to get my tickets." But so I took that time. I had interned at the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. my last quarter of college. It was required for my degree. Fell in love with D.C., just loved it. And so I ended up just taking kind of what people now call a gap year, between, some call it the gap year between high school and college, but I kind of did it between college and law school, and just moved back up to D.C., lived on the Hill.
Oh.
It was fantastic, lived right across from the Hart Senate building, and I just got a temp job, and I ended up working at the Smithsonian Castle, and in the Latin American program of all places, and I was the accountant, just not at all related to what I was doing. I mean, I temped for a law firm for like a week, but
still experiential.
Exactly. I was like, growing up in Dublin, small town, it was just a nice experience, and I got to meet folks from all over the country. And the place I stayed was a dorm for professional women.
Wow.
And it was designed precisely for young women that were coming to D.C. that, most of them were Hill interns. So those interning for congressmen, senators, and things like that. And so you can imagine staying in a place like that, what kind of women we met.
Right.
And of my group, 4 of us went on to law school.
Wow.
So
and are you still in touch with
we
those
are.
ladies? That's
we are.
amazing.
And they're from all over the country. So I'm in Georgia. One's still in D.C. She works for the World Bank. One works for Penn State. One works for the mayor out in Seattle. One is in bond law. I don't even understand what she does, but she's in San Francisco. And one works for Dell in Texas.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you guys all came from different places, but you all had the same, as you said, just like temp experience. But that really kind of wet the whistle for you there in D.C. And I'm
Right.
sure that kind of gave you a lot more vigor
Yes.
because you were there at the Capitol.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got to, I'd walk to work and I'd see the president out for his morning jog, and regardless of whether you liked his...
What president was that?
And now you're going to make me tell my age.
Come on,
So it was Bill Clinton.
Was he?
It was, and,
Wait,
I'm like,
were the bodyguards jogging alongside him?
They were.
Stop.
They were.
I can picture it like in a pack of 4, him in the
Yeah.
middle and like 2 in the front and 2 in the
Oh,
back.
yeah. Well, and then you had, the presidential limo and the cop cars and the ambulance that were driving on the road.
Man.
But yeah, he's just out
Jog
first
like a
morning
normal
jog
person.
on the mall.
Very
And
cool.
I'm like, there's the president.
yeah.
And I'm going to work in the Smithsonian Castle. Like, how cool is this?
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's obvious that you had some experiences that really kind of enriched your desire to continue and press forward. Talk about how you transitioned from that time in D.C., I guess, back here to Georgia, and fill in the gaps for our listeners.
So I did come back for just a few months because I needed to save a little bit more money. So I could, you can imagine, I didn't save any
Cost
money
of living
in
out
DC.
there is a little bit higher than here.
Yeah. And so I came back for just a few months before I ended up going out to Baylor. And I had researched Baylor. I knew I wanted to be a litigator. And I had never been to Texas. And so I actually went to visit while I was working in D.C., fell in love with the school. It was a smaller school, and the professors didn't have office hours. So if they were available, you could pop in. And it was just really nice. And they actually taught you how to practice law in addition to the normal law school curriculum. So it was just a really neat program that you actually had to learn how to file a complaint or answer discovery or file discovery. And what was even nicer, and I didn't even know it until it was time to graduate, and it's just so appropriate for kind of this segment, is, this is back in the late 90s when I graduated. And obviously, tons of progress had been made as far as equality and things like that. But right before we graduated, our associate dean, who was female, she and the other female professors took all of the graduating females out to lunch. And there were maybe, 10 or 12 of us, not a ton. And the reason they did that is they said, you're going to have a hard time finding mentors. And particularly, you're going to have a hard time finding female mentors, which is really a sad kind of comment on women's relationships. But they're like, we're here. So you get out in the workforce and you need some advice, you need a listening ear. That's what we're here for. And so it was just neat to have that
resource.
Exactly.
Network of resources. That is true. And a lot of powerhouse ladies whom I've had the pleasure of interviewing before you have shared something very similar about the dynamic of women in the professional world and personal world. And I would agree, it is very, it's essential to have a network or have your tribe of resources and friends if they are friends, but also people that you can trust and kind of lean on for their expertise as well.
Right.
And while I don't believe that all things are gender specific, I do believe that there's a certain alliance between, like you said, women in those roles.
Right.
So within that group, and you mentioned the word mentor, how many people do you still remain in contact with, if not them all? And who out of that group would you say made an impact most greatly to you?
So it's funny, I don't remain in contact with really any of those folks from law school, just because moving back to Georgia right after law school, you kind of lose that connection. I will say I actually had a very good mentor when I was in the Dublin DA's office, and it was a man because there weren't any other females there. And I think that can be typical. And again, it's a kind of an unfortunate commentary that, and we need to change it, is that professional women don't do a good enough job of mentoring other professional women. We've got to make sure, we understand that when all of us make progress, or when one of us makes progress, we all make progress. And, but I had just, a great mentor when I was in Dublin. He taught me stuff, but he also gave me my wings to fly on my own and to do my own thing, and which I think we babysit maybe young lawyers a little bit more today than we need to, which I saw when I was with the DA's office, because my first trial, they're like, okay, we're going to sit with you and we'll be right here, and we got the jury, we selected the jury, and then all of a sudden I'm looking around and I'm like, where'd they go? And so there I was trying my case, which you've got to do that. I mean, you need some training, but you've also got to be pushed out so you can do your thing and learn. And it was just the best way to learn.
And develop your own rhythm.
Exactly.
Because what you have seen, I'm sure you saw many examples in being in the court of people that served in your exact same role, and they were a depiction of what you did not want to be, or the way you did not want to rule. You were so kind to stay and entertain me with this show immediately after one that you were just hosted on. So I know you've been speaking for a while, but I got to catch the tail end of your show with Rick Strawn, which is Case in Point, every other Wednesday here on Gwinnett Business RadioX. And you mentioned that you have a skill that is very important in the courtroom, and it is that of being a great listener. Is that a skill that you were born with, or is that something that you had to develop throughout your personal awareness journey, or throughout kind of sitting in that role?
I think if you probably had asked my mother, she would have said I probably wasn't a good listener. Although, let me be clear, I was a nerd and I was a good child. But no, I think as a friend, I tended to be that one that folks would come to, that my friends would come to and say, hey, I've got this issue, or can you help me out with this problem? And so I think even early on, I was that person that was willing to listen and to offer advice, and that kind of kept going. When I was with the DA's office, I'd have several friends or individuals that I was supervising that they would come and share personal issues and say, this is what I've got going on, and can you help me out with that? And I would try to, just listen and give them my perspective, and you've got to have that as as a judge. You really do. I mean, you need it as a prosecutor, obviously, but that is the critical, I think, skill for a judge, is to make sure that we are listening and hearing. And you've got to do both. You've got to listen and then actually hear and process what people are saying.
Right.
And that's absolutely critical for them having trust in the system. Because if they're heard, then they feel seen.
And that it's fair.
Right.
Right. And through the process, obviously, it is our judicial system. It is their right to be heard.
That's
and
correct.
it is your responsibility to receive that information.
Indeed.
And like you said, digest it. I don't think I would be good at what you do, Tracie, A, because I'm not that great of a listener as opposed to a chatter. But B, also, I think it would be hard to kind of receive the information that you receive and be able to give an unbiased ruling. Share with me, just out of curiosity, and then I'll get out of the courtroom because you live in it all day.
Right.
When you have to make a decision or a ruling, how are you able to kind of field the things that you hear? And I'm going to use a strong word. It might not be appropriate, but compartmentalize, is that maybe the right word? Because you're hearing all kinds of radical things, and you are forced to make a decision based on the information that is presented to you. But where do you kind of help me understand your thinking throughout that process? Because sometimes you can't just rely on logic. Sometimes you have to take your emotion completely out of the situation in order to rule fairly. What goes on in your mind when you're coming to these decisions?
Yeah, and I think you did hit on it. You do have to compartmentalize, and it doesn't mean that I don't have a personal opinion about whatever situation is in front of me, because I'm human, of course I do. But what I have to do is extract what I am legally bound to be doing, which, depending on the kind of case it is, if it's a criminal case, then I have to look at what the evidence shows of what that individual did, not necessarily who that individual is, though I do take that into account depending on the circumstance and trying to fashion a sentence that is going to hit the root of the problem as well as protect the community and the victim. But you really just have to step back and say, okay, here's the evidence that's presented, and then what is my duty in this particular case? So like in custody cases, it's what's in the best interest of the child. And I've told parents more often than not, I'm like, my duty is not to you. My duty is not to make either one of you happy. My duty is to make sure that I've got the best interest of this child, and I make decisions that are in their best interest. Mm-hmm. And neither one of you may leave here happy, or you both may leave here happy. That's not my job. My job is to make sure that that child is protected. And I get a lot of nods when I tell parents that, because they're like, oh, okay. And it kind of refocuses them to why they're in court. Because a lot of, as you can imagine, parents forget about the kids when they're in court. And I think, too, coming from a criminal background, it really helped me to be able to take the emotion out of it, because, and I hate to use this word, but I think it's the only word that's appropriate, you do get a little desensitized. Mm-hmm. And that may not necessarily be a bad thing in this context, because, the more you're exposed to anything, the more you're desensitized to it, whether it's a good or bad.
I was going to say you become callous, so you said exactly the same thing.
Right. And you have to actually really work against becoming calloused. I think you can be desensitized without being calloused, and you almost have to be desensitized, otherwise you'll be in a fetal position under your desk with the types of cases that we see.
Well, you said something that also stands out to me. You said that you're a protector of the community, and that is what you do first and foremost. And first of all, I want to thank you so much for serving Gwinnett County fervently and always having the best interest of the community at heart. What are some things that you yourself do, or you guys do as a whole within the judge role to give back to the community? I know I see you at civic events, at chamber events, so on and so forth, but what are some things that are kind of near and dear to your heart that you participate in?
Well, so clearly because of the way I got introduced to the legal system, I've been a coach for mock trial since the late 90s when I was in Dublin.
At a school or like
high school?
Okay.
Yeah. So I coached West Lawrence High School mock trial when I was down in Lawrence County. And then when I moved up here, I coached Duluth High School for a number of years. We won the region, so we were super excited. And then Gwinnett's a big county. From where we lived in Loganville, it just got to be a little bit too much of a distance. And so then we moved to Bethlehem, and then we have established the mock trial program at Tequila High School.
Nice.
And so, and then when, unfortunately, like when my teams don't advance beyond the regional competition, then I'll always volunteer to judge the district competitions or the state competition, because it was so important to me growing up, that whole process. And so I love coaching mock trial. As you can imagine from the types of cases that I did, and of course, you're a big supporter of Home of Hope Children's Shelter. So my husband and I will go out there. I can't give legal advice, but he will go out, talk to some of the residents there. If they have small legal issues, he can help them navigate.
Is he in law as well?
He is. He's a lawyer.
Very nice.
He is. And then I can explain, like if they just have a question about, well, how does this process work? Then I can explain the judicial process or how the case may work its way through the system, because I can't give advice.
Right.
But we try to give back in that, because as you can probably imagine, the mothers of these children often have some legal obstacles that they need to get out of the way in order to be able to advance their life and their goals and that thing.
Very neat. I didn't think about that, but that makes total sense. As far as the mock trial coaching, I bet that just kind of ignites a fire within you when you sit there and you remember being on the other side and being inspired as a youngster. So, and I know you can't be biased. Never can you be biased. But just out of curiosity, based on all the mock trials that you coach, have you seen anybody similar to yourself that you saw right then? You're like, oh, they've got it. They're going to go for it. And you know that they have a bright future in a realm of sorts? Oh,
absolutely. So we have 2 students right now in Tequila. One is about to graduate. She's a natural. She's better than a lot of lawyers I see in my courtroom. And we're so excited because she just got a full ride to Princeton.
Oh,
and
nice.
She wants to go into law. So
they're the Tigers,
excited.
Aren't they? Princeton Tigers?
I think they are.
Yeah.
I think they are.
Yes, they are.
And then we've got another student that she's about to be a junior, and she is amazing and wants to go into law, so I can't wait to see what the next couple of years. But many years ago at Duluth, we coached a young lady that we really thought was going to go into law, but she actually went into naval intelligence.
Oh,
right.
Nice.
And I see her mother a good bit out in the community, and she just, she warms my heart, because she says, those skills that you taught her in mock trial really helped her become the professional that she is.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's just so it's so rewarding when you get a kid that may not be quite so confident, and then you just see them blossom.
Yes.
Like you teach the law, and then you give them the opportunity to perform, because it is a performance, it's a competition, and you just see that confidence grow, and you're just like, I'll get frustrated with it. I'm not going to lie. I'll be like, I've been in court all day. I really do not want to go coach. And every year I say I'm not going to do it because it's just too much. And then every year I get drawn back in, because when it gets to competition time, they somehow pull it together, and you see everything that you've taught, and they're putting it into play, and you're like, oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
So then I get drawn back in.
That kind of speaks to the way that you serve as a mentor. I'm sure if any one of the candidates for the mock trials wanted to call upon you or have a conversation or coffee, I'm sure that you would welcome that. And that's a testament to you doing the reach back and pulling other people forward. Yeah. Tracie, before we take a quick break, or excuse me, I apologize. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about our fur babies. All right, here's the word from our partners. Since 1982, CAB Incorporated has been a distinguished leader in manufacturing and global sourcing, serving a variety of industries, including infrastructure, hydraulics, automotive, and rail, with their precision machined iron and steel products. As a woman-owned company, CAB Incorporated is proud to be a returning partner of the Celebrating Powerhouse Women series. With strong roots in the past and firm footing in the future, Capital City Home Loans combines an old-fashioned sense of community with a progressive attitude. They are a trusted full-service lender, offering mortgage finance products and empowering their associates to help clients choose the best options. They are focused on being the best and strongest lender in the Southeast. Visit cchl.com/locations to see all of their offices, including Gwinnett. And welcome back, friends, to Celebrating Powerhouse Women. I am your host, Amanda Pierce, joined in studio today by Superior Court Judge Tracie Cason. Before the break, we were talking about her enthusiasm for the courtroom and also in giving back to the next generation of lawyers or possibly anybody within the justice system through the mock trial programs. But we're going to deviate from that, and we're going to talk about our four-legged friends, Tracie. You and I were swapping photos before the show of our little Dachshund babies. Yes. Tracie and I both have an affinity for the Dachshund breed, and she has a pack of troublemakers.
Oh, we do.
And I only had one who is no longer with me, Miss Reagan. However, she's smiling down in heaven at us right now. But just share with our listeners a little bit about the chaos that you manage at home with your four-legged friends. Yes. And go ahead and tell us a little bit about them and share with them their names, being that you're a UGA enthusiast.
Okay. So, yeah, we, my husband and I have four fur babies, and we love them just crazily. And so we have 3 dachshunds that we rescued, and then we have a chocolate lab that we got from a friend of ours in Dublin. But our dachshunds, as I mentioned earlier, we're huge Georgia fans. So our dachshunds are named Munson, Dooley, and Irk, which is, of course, short for Erskine Russell. Oh. So his name is Erskine Russell Cason.
When he's in trouble.
That's right. When he's in trouble, it's Erskine Russell Cason. So I love it. Thanks, Mike.
Mike is also a UGA grad.
Yes,
so
yes.
Oh.
So they, it is funny because, like I said, we adopted them and we named them before we got them, and they have taken on the personalities of who they're named after. So Munson is our talker, and everybody say a little prayer for my Munson man because he had surgery yesterday, had to remove a mass, but he is, we think, maybe 18-ish. So, and he's still kicking. And he's our talker. Mm-hmm. And then Dooley will be 15 in August. And he does take after Vince Dooley. He's our quiet, contemplative thinker. He's actually a Dachshund Jack Russell mix with zero Jack Russell personality. He's our couch potato, unlike Vince. But and then Irk, for those of you that know, Irk came in as a puppy and just started headbutting the other 2 dogs, like, play with me, which of course is what Irk Russell would do to his players. Mm-hmm. And then MMA, she's not named for a Georgia person. She's named after my husband's grandmother.
Oh.
And she is a beautiful, beautiful milk chocolate lab. So it's just the most gorgeous
color, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and she's the sweetest thing. She was supposed to be a hunting dog, but she's a house dog.
Oh.
And she's a sweetheart.
She was supposed to be a hunting dog for the people that you adopted her with before, or for you and your husband?
We got her as a puppy, and for my husband to be a hunting dog.
A bird dog?
A bird dog. Mm-hmm. And she went to bird dog school, but then she got hurt at bird dog school. Well, she strained her leg.
Oh, bless her.
She wasn't hurt that badly,
yeah.
thankfully. Mm-hmm. And so she came home, and that was all she wrote.
Well,
when
she
came
retired.
home, then she had to be a house dog.
Oh, bless her
Which
heart.
we tell her being a house dog is better than being a hunting dog.
It is. Well, now let me just ask you, does she kind of rear the Dachsies because she is the largest of the 4? Does she assume that role, or do the Dachsies take over because there's 3 of them and 1 of her?
Oh, no. They rule the roost. And here's the funny thing. She thinks she's a dachshund.
Ooh.
She thinks she's a little dog.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that have ever seen that Disney movie, The Ugly Dachshund, it's like from the 60s. With Suzette Plachette, and it was like 3 little show Dachsies, and the husband wanted a big dog, so he got a Great Dane. Well, the Great Dane, thought it was a Dachshund because it was raised by Dachshunds, so we call her the pretty Dachshund.
Oh, so, the pretty Dachshund. Well, I love that they are so energetic and slightly mischievous. And that when they run, it just looks so funny with their little legs, like that. And I'm thrilled that we have that in common. I know that as they age, you know, they get, I call it the raccoon phase, because Reagan's whole muzzle got silver. And then her eyes and her little rear end too.
That's how Munson is.
They just look so stoic.
They look
and
regal.
Jinx! Yes, regal. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
Do you and your doggies like to go for walks? What do you and your husband like to do for fun?
So we go to all of the Georgia sporting events. Emma goes for walks because
she's bigger.
She's bigger, and she is the more well-trained. She is a lab, so she has a better disposition for minding. As you were pointing out, the Doxies have little stubborn streaks in them, and whereas Munson and Dooley would probably be okay, Irk is a full-on rabble-rouser.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we can't take him. We can't take him anywhere.
He's confrontational.
So he is. He's like, and so we're like, well, buddy, I know you like to go, but you can't.
Gotta stay.
Now, we do take them on vacation, and we take them as many places with us as we can,
friendly.
Because we don't like to leave them.
No.
And thankfully, we have a dog sitter that will come stay with them, so we don't have to board them.
Oh, thank goodness. I rarely boarded Reagan, only in her youth a couple times, and at the place that she's been groomed for over a decade. But leaving them it's very hard. They're our babies. Well, thank you for allowing me to get to know a little bit of the personal side of you. I wanted to share, because we are on a podcast, I turned to podcasting to learn about individuals and for personal growth and development, and just for entertainment sometimes. What are some podcasts that you enjoy listening to, or some books? I know you don't probably have too much time to read recreationally, but just some things that Tracie enjoys outside of the courtroom.
So I don't listen to a ton of podcasts, although my husband and I did listen to the Red Clay series about the Dixie Mafia and that kind of whole thing that, you know, wrapped Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina back in the 60s. But honestly, when I have free time as far as reading, I like fiction. I like Mary Kay Andrews, who is a Georgia native. She used to write for the AJC, and she lives in Savannah, so she writes a lot of her books around Savannah, Tybee, and they're just fun, you know, the beach read type books, because everything we deal with in our work is so heavy.
You want to just relax your mind.
When I relax, it's, you know, Big Bang Theory that's just funny
and silly. Yes.
Yep.
I feel you 100%. Sometimes you have to just totally detach so that you can stay refreshed in order to serve in the way that you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you were to give some young ladies, because we're speaking specifically about the ladies, advice who are kind of heading into their professional development and career, what are some things that you would kind of leave with our listeners about your progression to success?
I would say, know your goals and know the path that you want to take. I was very specific in that I wanted to develop my career before I thought about having a relationship or having a family. And I was very intentional about that. And so, you know, be intentional about what your plan is and understand that where you may have folks that will help you, you've got to stand up for yourself. And a lot of women have a hard time doing that. And the ones that do sometimes get criticized for being bossy or other words. And we've got to make sure that we're teaching our young women to stand up for themselves, but also to do it in a way that's non-offensive. And some people may be like, that's offensive. But we all have to live in this world. And if you try to throw something in somebody's face and force something on them, it's the biggest way for them to put up a wall and for you not to get what you want. And that's not to say that you cave or you compromise, but you need to make sure that you're being intentional and you're being forceful in a non-offensive way, because the ultimate goal is to get what you want. And you need to figure out the way to do that.
Speaking from a personal, I'm asking you from a personal development standpoint. I experience that sometimes with my delivery. What advice would you give, or what things would you say are crucial to making sure that your message is heard, that you're representing yourself strong and well, but without being viewed so overbearing or forward or offensive or the other words? What are some pointers that you'd give specifically someone like me?
Well, I think you've got to present something in a way that's non-accusatory, because the moment like somebody accuses me of something, the walls go up. I'm not listening to them. Even if I were to agree with them, I'm probably not ever going to admit it because of the way it was delivered. And so you have to be non-accusatory. You have to present ideas in a way that they can get to that place without you forcing them to that place. And I say that to my husband sometimes. I'm like, I might agree with you, but the way in which you just presented that, my competitive nature is not going to let me do that. And so you have to kind of take that out of it. If your ultimate goal is to get somebody to come around to your side, it can't be forced upon them. You have to be non-accusatory and allow them to get there on their own. And so that they can own that decision, as opposed to you force that decision on them.
You just made me think. I can imagine that you and your husband, not to say you have many disputes within the household, but I'm sure when you guys have any point of contention, that it is an interesting way that you come to your decision, because you both plead good cases and deliver good arguments.
Correct. And I will say there are just some things we don't talk about at home.
Hey, I understand that. Well, thank you. Approach it from a non-accusatory standpoint and kind of help guide people to get there on their own, allow them to get to that message. Tracie, thank you for that advice, and thank you for all of the wisdom that you've shared with our listeners. I would be remiss if I didn't allow you to share where people might be able to find your current campaign as you are running. Share with them your campaign site, or how they can reach you or support you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. So yes, judges are elected, so I am running for re-election, and I have a website. It's www.traciecason.com, and that's TracieCason. TracieCason.com, and so you can go on there, you can email us, it's got our phone number. But the biggest thing is to make sure that people understand that the judges' races are nonpartisan. So our general election is May 24th, and that's same for the school board as well, which is a big change for Gwinnett voters, that they just changed school board to nonpartisan. So your nonpartisan races, judges and school board, May 24th is our general election. You will not find us on the November ballot.
Okay.
So you have to vote in May. And of course, early voting starts May 2nd, runs through May 24th. There are 8, I believe, early voting precincts. You can pick any one of those. You don't have to pick the one closest to your home. And then, obviously, the day of, you go to your precinct. But May 2nd through 20th and May 24th.
Get out there and vote.
Got to vote.
I love seeing your signs all over the place. That green and the blue is sharp. I love seeing it, of course. And I look forward to seeing you out in the marketplace as you and I rub elbows in some of the same places. Again, thank you for joining us, Tracie. I've been speaking with Superior Court Judge here in Gwinnett County, Tracie Cason, and she is absolutely a powerhouse woman.
I love it. Go dogs.
We are red and black up in here. For all of you out there listening who care to enjoy previous episodes, our episodes are available 24/7 online at businessradiox.com, but no need to even just type that into your computer on your handheld device or your cellular telephone. Go wherever you enjoy your audio shows and type in Celebrating Powerhouse Women. If you find value in this series, I would appreciate a subscription and also a 5-star review. Until next time, I am your host, Amanda Pierce, and this has been Celebrating Powerhouse Women.